What if I told you that CNN's own data analyst just revealed the Democrats are running behind their previous midterm benchmarks by a staggering 23-point swing compared to the last blowout election? That the state of New Mexico, which has voted Democrat in every presidential election for 20 years, is now on a documented trajectory to flip red, as Republicans have cut the registration gap nearly in half. And that every major Democrat presidential hopeful for 2028 is now publicly running away from the very positions they championed in 2020 because they know those positions are political poison. Stick around, because what happened next will blow your mind. 7 months. That is all that stands between right now and the 2026 midterm elections. And this morning, the Democrat Party woke up to a set of numbers so devastating, so comprehensive, and so impossible to spin that even their own operatives are privately calling it a nightmare. The polls are catastrophic. The voter registration trends are catastrophic. The favorability numbers are catastrophic. And the most telling sign of all, the one that proves even the Democrats themselves know how bad things are, is the fact that every single major presidential hopeful in their party is now desperately trying to distance themselves from the radical left-wing positions they were proudly championing just a few years ago. That is not a strategic pivot. That is a 5-alarm fire inside a party that knows it is heading off a cliff and cannot find the brakes. If you believe that the Democrat Party's collapse in the polls is the direct result of years of radical left-wing policies that the American people never wanted and never supported, smash that like button right now. Every click helps us spread the truth about where this country is actually headed, while the mainstream media tries to sell you a fantasy. Because by the end of this video, you will understand exactly what CNN's own numbers show about the Democrat position heading into the midterms, and why the comparison to previous wave elections is devastating. What is happening in New Mexico that proves the political realignment is penetrating states that Democrats considered permanently blue. Why every major 2028 presidential hopeful is running from their own record, and what that tells you about the internal state of the Democrat Party. And why the combination of the Obama coalition's transformation into the Trump coalition and the Democrats' consistent positioning on the wrong side of every major issue is producing an extinction-level political event. Now, let me start with the polling, because what CNN reported this morning should be the top story on every news network in America. It is not, of course, because the story is bad for the Democrats, but the numbers speak for themselves. CNN's data analyst, Enten, walked through the net favorability numbers for both parties at this point in the midterm cycle and compared them to the last two blowout elections that the Democrats won. And the comparison is absolutely brutal. In 2006, Democrats won 31 House seats and 6 Senate seats in what was considered a massive wave election. At this point in that cycle, Democrats were up by 18 points on net favorability. 18. That is the kind of advantage that produces landslides. In 2018, Democrats won 40 House seats in another wave. At this point in that cycle, they were up by 12 points on net favorability. Not as strong as 2006, but still a commanding position. Now look at where they are today. At this same point in the 2026 cycle, Democrats are not up by 18. They are not up by 12. They are not up at all. Republicans are actually ahead by 5 points on net favorability. Let those numbers settle in. In the last two wave midterms, Democrats were plus 18 and plus 12 at this point. Today, they are minus 5. That is a 23-point swing toward the GOP compared to 2006, a 17-point swing compared to 2018. The Democrats are not just behind their benchmarks. They are in a completely different universe from where they need to be to take back the House. And Enten said it plainly. Democrats are running behind their previous benchmarks, and they need to be running well ahead of them if they want to take back the House or the Senate. They need to be well ahead. They are behind. And they are behind by a margin that makes a wave election for them essentially impossible based on every historical model. Now, before I go further, I want to acknowledge what every honest analyst has to acknowledge. Midterms are historically brutal for the party in power. Over the last century, the party holding the White House has lost seats in every midterm except for 3: 1934, 1998, 2002. Every other time, the president's party gets hammered. Average loss is over 20 seats. That is the historical headwind that Republicans face. But look at the conditions building for 2026 and ask yourself whether they resemble a normal midterm or an exceptional one. Trump's approval rating at Rasmussen sits at 47%. In this hyper-partisan environment, that is strong. Presidential approval is one of the two most accurate predictive indicators for midterm results, along with right track, wrong track polling. When a president is in the low 40s or mid 30s, his party gets destroyed in the midterms. Guaranteed, every time. But when a president is at or near the high 40s or 50, the historical penalty either shrinks dramatically or disappears entirely. Trump is in the zone where the traditional midterm curse may not apply. He is not underwater. He is not in the danger zone. He is at a level where historical models suggest his party can hold or even gain seats. And that makes the favorability numbers we just walked through even more significant. Because if the president's party is not going to suffer the normal midterm penalty, and the opposing party is running 17 to 23 points behind its previous wave benchmarks, then the conditions are being set for something genuinely historic. Now let me show you what is happening in New Mexico, because this is the story that proves the political realignment is not just happening in swing states. It is penetrating deep into territory that the Democrats considered permanently, irreversibly theirs. New Mexico has not voted for a Republican president since 2004. 20 years of unbroken Democrat victories. It has been considered one of the most reliably blue states in the Mountain West. The kind of state that does not even appear on the Republican electoral map because winning it seems so far-fetched that it is not worth the investment. And yet, the voter registration data coming out of New Mexico right now is telling a story that should terrify every Democrat strategist in the country. From November 2024 to the most recent data, Republicans have added approximately 21,000 new voters in New Mexico. 21,000. In a small state, that is enormous. Total Republican registration has risen from 422,000 to 437,000 and climbing. Every single month, the number goes up. But just as importantly, Democrats are not just stagnating, they are losing voters. During the same period, Democrats saw a decline of over 11,000 registrations. People are not just declining to register as Democrats, they are actively leaving the party, walking into registration offices and changing their affiliation. When you combine the Republican gains with the Democrat losses, the net swing is approximately 26,000 voters in favor of the Republicans since 2024. 26,000. And Kamala Harris won New Mexico by just 55,000 votes. The Republicans have already cut that margin nearly in half, in a matter of months, without a campaign, without a candidate, without a single dollar spent on advertising, just through organic voter registration shifts. Election forecaster Seth Keshel has included New Mexico as one of a tier of 4 forthcoming presidential red states. He is projecting that at the current rate of registration change, New Mexico will flip red. Not trend red, not become slightly more competitive, flip. A state that has voted Democrat in every presidential election for 2 decades will become a Republican state. Now let me explain why this is happening, because the forces driving the New Mexico shift are the same forces driving the realignment across the entire country. And they trace back to one fundamental transformation. The Obama coalition has become the Trump coalition. That single sentence explains everything happening in American politics right now. And a recent analysis confirmed exactly how and why this transformation occurred. The Obama coalition was built on 2 pillars, the white working class and the Latino working class. Together, these 2 groups gave Obama his massive victories in 2008 and 2012. White working class support helped Obama win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Ohio, and Iowa twice. And the Latino vote, which is predominantly working class, helped Obama win Florida twice. Latinos voted for Obama by a margin of more than 2 to 1, 70% for Obama, 30% for the Republican. Both of those pillars have now collapsed for the Democrats and transferred to Trump. It started with the white working class in 2016. Nearly 200 counties across Wisconsin, Iowa, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Minnesota that had voted Democrat in every presidential election for 30 years suddenly switched to Trump, some by 20-point margins. The white working class looked at the Democrat Party, looked at what it had become, looked at its obsession with identity politics and its contempt for traditional values and its indifference to economic concerns, and they walked out the door. Then in 2024, the second pillar fell. The Latino working class followed the white working class into the Republican Party. Trump won Latino men outright at 54%, a 40-point swing on the issue of immigration. Miami-Dade turned red for the first time. Starr County, Texas, 98% Latino, a county that voted Democrat in every presidential election for a century, went for Trump. And now those same forces are hitting New Mexico. Because New Mexico's demographics are dominated by the exact two groups that have defected from the Democrats, working-class whites and working-class Latinos. The state is essentially the perfect laboratory for the Obama to Trump coalition transformation. And the voter registration data confirms that the transformation is happening at exactly the pace you would expect. CNN's own Harry Enten recently pointed out that Latino voters have swung to the GOP by 40 points on the issue of immigration since 2020. In 2020, Democrats had a plus 32 advantage on who Latinos trusted more on immigration. Today, the GOP has a nearly plus 10 advantage, a 42-point swing, among the demographic that Democrats have always assumed was permanently theirs. And immigration is not even the only driver. It is the economy. It is law and order. It is the cost of living. It is the culture war. It is the Democrats' embrace of woke ideology that is repulsive to the culturally conservative, family-oriented, faith-driven Latino community. It is every single 80-20 issue where the Democrats have positioned themselves on the 20% side. Now, let me show you the most damning evidence of all that the Democrats know how bad things are, because their own behavior proves they understand the crisis even as their public messaging pretends everything is fine. Every major Democrat presidential hopeful for 2028 is now actively and publicly running away from the positions they championed in 2020. Every one. And the list of reversals reads like an indictment of the entire progressive agenda. Gavin Newsom, who used the word Latinx repeatedly in 2020, now brags that not a single person in his office has ever used the word Latinx. The same word, the same man, 6 years apart. He went from championing the term to bragging about banning it, because he knows that term was invented by progressive academics and is rejected by the vast majority of actual Latino Americans. Josh Shapiro, who was at the center of some of the most draconian COVID lockdowns in the country during his time in Pennsylvania, now says that Democrats mismanaged the masking and vaccine mandates, the same mandates he enforced, the same policies he championed. He is now admitting they were wrong because he knows that COVID overreach cost the Democrats millions of voters. Pete Buttigieg, the king of DEI, is now saying that DEI makes people feel like they are being dragged into a training session. The man who built his entire political brand around diversity, equity, and inclusion is now distancing himself from the very concept, because he knows that DEI has become one of the most unpopular political positions in the country. And it is not just these three. Across the board, Democrat presidential hopefuls are retreating from progressive positions on border security, transgender ideology, defunding the police, and climate policy. They are all doing it at the same time. They are all doing it for the same reason. And that reason is that the polling, the voter registration data, the election results, and the special election outcomes have all made it undeniably clear that the progressive agenda is electoral poison. But here is the problem with their pivot. It only goes halfway. Because these same candidates who are retreating on cultural issues are simultaneously moving further left on technology, AI regulation, and Israel. Bernie Sanders remains one of the most popular figures in the entire party. The progressive base that demands wokeness has not gone anywhere. It is still the dominant force in Democrat primaries. So what you have is a party trying to say two completely opposite things at the same time. Moderate on culture to win the general election. Radical on economics and foreign policy to win the primary. And voters, according to every poll, are seeing right through it. You cannot spend 5 years telling people that borders are racist, police should be defunded, men can be women, voter ID is white supremacy, and the American flag is problematic, and then show up 6 months before an election and pretend you never said any of it. The voters remember. The internet remembers. The campaign ads that the Republicans are going to run featuring every one of those statements will ensure that nobody forgets. Now let me connect all of this together because the polling collapse, the New Mexico shift, the 2028 panic, and the Obama to Trump coalition transformation are all part of the same story. And that story is the most consequential political narrative in modern American history. The Democrat Party positioned itself on the wrong side of every major issue that matters to the American people. Border security, mass deportations, banning biological men from women's sports, voter ID law and order, parental rights and education. On every single one of these issues, 80% of Americans are on one side and the Democrats are on the other. They have become the party of the 20%. The party of the fringe, the party that represents the most radical elements of the American political spectrum and cannot garner majority support on a single issue. And the consequences are now mathematical. The 4-to-1 defection ratio means Democrats are losing members 4 times faster than they gain them. The voter registration trends in every battleground state are moving toward the Republicans. The blue states are hemorrhaging population while the red states are booming. The 2030 census is going to strip Democrats of between 12 and 16 electoral votes and congressional seats. And their own presidential hopefuls are running from their own record because they know it is indefensible. The midterm polls show them running 23 points behind their 2006 benchmark. Trump's approval is in the zone where the historical midterm penalty may not apply. The redistricting war has netted Republicans 10 additional seats. The Voting Rights Act decision could deliver another 12 to 19. The special election results show Republicans winning in districts they are not supposed to win. And New Mexico, a state that has been blue for 20 years, is trending red so fast that analysts are projecting it will flip before the next presidential election. This is not a bad cycle for the Democrats. This is a structural collapse, the kind that does not reverse in one election or 2 elections or even a generation. The pillars of the Democrat coalition, working class whites, working class Latinos, labor unions, border communities, religious voters, moderate suburbanites, have all either left or are in the process of leaving. And nothing the Democrats are doing suggests they know how to get them back. Running from their 2020 positions is not a strategy. It is an admission that the progressive experiment failed, that wokeness is poison, that open borders destroyed their brand with the very communities they claim to champion, that defunding the police turned their cities into war zones, that COVID mandates shattered the trust of millions of Americans who will never forgive and never forget. They know all of this. The 2028 pivot proves they know it. But knowing it and fixing it are two very different things. Because the progressive base that controls the Democrat primary process does not want to moderate. They want more wokeness, more open borders, more trans ideology, more identity politics, more of everything that is driving voters away. And any candidate who tries to moderate will be devoured by their own base before they ever reach the general election. That is the trap. The general electorate demands moderation that the primary electorate will not allow. The Democrat Party is caught between a base that demands radicalism and a country that is rejecting it. And there is no way out of that trap. Not in 2026, not in 2028, not for the foreseeable future. Today is a very bad day to be a Democrat. Tomorrow will be worse, and November will be the worst of all. Don't stop here. The midterm polls are shifting every week, and the voter registration data out of states like New Mexico is being updated monthly with numbers that keep getting worse for the Democrats. Click on the next video and join us as we continue to cover the most significant political realignment in modern American history and every sign that the Democrat Party's collapse is accelerating faster than anyone predicted.